Another edition of the Heel to the Face podcast via Skype. We're joined with Brandon the Icebreaker Clements. This week we're going to talk Money in the Bank, Drake Maverick being released. Is that a work? And more as the Heel to the Face podcast starts right now.
So silence your cell phones, hold your applause, and tune into the truth.
Oh, you didn't know? Your ass better call somebody.
Getting beat up by 9 guys in Syracuse, to me, there's not a whole lot of shame in.
From the 315 to the world, this is the Heel to Face podcast.
The cream of the crop! Wow, man, freaked out!
Follow the show on Twitter and Instagram at Heel to the Face.
I said, are you ready?
From Armory Square in downtown Syracuse, New York, let's send it now to Brandon and Jared.
Bad luck seems to be my middle name. They might as well tag me up with my buddies from Syracuse.
So with Brandon Clements coming to you from Syracuse, New York, not Armory Square to be specific, this is the Heel to the Face podcast. We are on Twitter and Instagram at Heel to the Face, mostly on Twitter. You can find our links to the podcast Skype. Well, Skype is what we're coming to you on, but we're on Spotify, we're on YouTube, we're on iHeartRadio, and much, much more. As you can find Icebreaker21, the guy to the side of me, Brandon Clements on Twitter at Icebreaker21, and myself on Twitter and Instagram at KRockJared. Let's get this week's version of the show started. And I think I want to start things out with Drake Maverick. He was one of the people we talked about last week getting released from WWE. He had a match last night where he got eliminated in the Cruiserweight tournament, part of NXT. Now, part of me thought that was obviously pre-recorded to the release, but afterwards they were kind of using it a little fodder. Some of the people that he lost to, or for example, Tony Nese, who was in the tournament, felt no sympathy. The person he lost to says he feels bad, meaning that they were aware that the release of Drake Maverick happened prior to the matches taking place, making us all to wonder, is the release of Drake Maverick a work?
At first, I didn't think it was. When I saw that video that he posted last week on social media, I was like, man, this guy's really upset. Like this, this is his livelihood. He's been doing it for so many years. I think it was 19 years was what was mentioned on the broadcast last night. But after seeing how things played out at NXT, I'm like, whoa, I think this is a work. I mean, they're doing, like, usually what WWE does is if you're on your way out, they're not going to give you a little kick. They're not going to give you a cool little storyline to go out. They're going to say, all right, see you later. Because we don't, like they did that with Dean Ambrose. Like, you didn't see much of him as he was leaving. They did that special on the network. But Drake Maverick, I mean, they're giving him a little bit of a storyline, a little bit, kick in the pants. I think he's staying. I think it's just a work, to be honest with you.
I think maybe it wasn't initially a work, but the fact that maybe the first round match in this Cruiserweight tournament was already recorded, and he kind of played into that, the fact that, hey, I still have a match to, wrestle, aka it's already been recorded. I think then WWE saw a way of trying to make this a work and maybe bringing him back, even if it's just for the tournament, of saying like, hey, let's turn this into a little storyline real quick, because some of these matches are pre-taped and you kind of broke the fourth wall there as you were released, but then advertising you were still on television. They tried doing the same, it looks like, with Sarah Logan on Monday Night Raw. There was a lot of rumors that she was supposed to be back in Monday Night Raw, and maybe that was a work. They wrote her off at the last minute. Do you think, though, that this is kind of insensitive, if it is a work, to those who really did get released?
Yeah, I do. I think it's very insensitive, because it's like you're giving some folks, an opportunity to kind of, they're quote unquote off the program, off the, not getting a paycheck from WWE, but now they are. To other people that got released, it's a kick in the pants. It's a kick, it's a kick in the rear end, so to speak. It's tough because these people they got bills to pay just like the rest of us. So it's one of those things where, yeah, you're getting the 30-day severance package reportedly from what I saw on online. But still, 30 days, that's you still have bills to pay the rest of your life. So, you can't play with people's emotions like that. I get it. It's a business. WWE is very ruthless about it. So I see why they're doing it. But if I was one of those people getting cut and not getting back on programming, or in the same situation maybe as Drake Maverick, heck yeah, I'd be ticked off. I'd be blowing it up on Twitter. I would be saying something, I'd be ticked off about it. But here's the thing. When you have that WWE name next to you, even if you're fired from WWE, you can literally go to Auburn High School, upstate New York, and go to
You love referencing that show you went to for Big Time Wrestling or Northeast Championship Wrestling. You saw a lot of names of that show back in the day.
Yes, I did. I saw that show. I saw Matt Hardy. I saw I saw Dijak there, who's prominently on AEW now, or on NXT right now. I saw Mick Foley signing some autographs. Mickey James was there. I mean, there were some really big names that were there. So I mean, even though these people get fired from WWE, you can still go to Northeastern Wrestling Presents former WWE superstar, whoever it is. So it's a double-edged sword. I mean, I get WWE's a business, but there's also an emotional side to it.
So let's move over to Money in the Bank. And Money in the Bank is a good example of, listen, I am definitely heartbroken that I didn't get to go to WrestleMania. I disappointed that WrestleMania didn't end up being WrestleMania. But even with that said, without me even scheduled to go to WrestleMania this past year in Tampa, I think, and I said it before, more than just for my vacation plans, that WrestleMania and this whole coronavirus thing going on really happened at a horrible time. And Money in the Bank is proving that, in the sense that if at least WrestleMania, let's say, would have been scheduled for July, and I don't mean rescheduled for July, I mean, let's just say, this happened in January, and this all started in January. So we had the Royal Rumble and Elimination Chamber under our belts with this whole Performance Center format before we got to WrestleMania. I think WrestleMania could have indeed been better because they would have gotten some of the kinks out. And Money in the Bank, to me, is a perfect example of that. Because if you are going to do it the way you're doing it, this pre-produced, not live in some aspects from the Performance Center, Money in the Bank in the sense of making these Money in the Bank matches happen at Titan Towers. Now, that is some creativity I would have loved to see for WrestleMania. The Boneyard match, I mean, I get it, but the rest of WrestleMania seemed a little flat. You didn't have, I thought we were going to have at least some elements of WrestleMania. I thought Charlotte Flair was going to get out of a limousine in the parking lot, and they were going to have some elaborate entrance of her walking down the street. I thought maybe Becky Lynch, they would have showed her pulling up in that semi-truck from miles away, made that an entrance. I would have thought, maybe even some of these matches would have spilled out onto the streets or something, a little more than what they did. And Money in the Bank, I think, is proving that. I'm excited for this element of fighting on Titan Towers. I've already seen some of the shots of the ring on top of Titan Towers with the Money in the Bank briefcases hanging. Yep. This is WWE, turning, lemons into lemonade.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you're climbing up the corporate ladder. I mean, that's cool. I think it's a great gimmick. I think especially with these times, WWE creative, kudos. I'll give them a little clap there. They're doing a great job with this, but I do agree. They did drop the ball in some aspects at WrestleMania, aside from the Boneyard match, aside from, Edge and Randy Orton. That was a good match. There was a couple decent matches on the card.
But there wasn't the creativity.
No.
I think WrestleMania, to me, again, I'll argue to the day I die, WrestleMania this year wasn't WrestleMania because it was missing the elements of WrestleMania. Wrestling, you can have wrestling, as you just mentioned, in Auburn, New York. You can have Mick Foley. You can have Drake Maverick. What makes WrestleMania different than those events is more than the wrestling. You can have New Japan's Wrestle Kingdom isn't WrestleMania, not because it doesn't have great wrestling. It's got way better wrestling, but because it doesn't have the entertainment aspect. And I think that's a big thing of what WrestleMania was missing. And at least in Money in the Bank, they're showing a little more creativity, a little something that, you don't see every single day. And I think that this match of being a match, because the Boneyard match was decent, I will say. The Firefly Funhouse match, it wasn't a match. That's the problem here. This is going to be the elements of both pre-production while actually feeling more like an athletic contest, even more so probably than the Boneyard match, because the Boneyard match, was a real pre-produced, a staged production, a movie-style fight. I think this is going to have elements of Edge and Randy Orton at WrestleMania mixed with the Boneyard match. That's what this Money in the Bank is going to feel like.
Yeah, I think overall, I think it's going to be a good show. I'm considering the circumstances, I'm ready for it. I will say this, having everything that's going on with the pandemic across the world, it sucks because you get a guy like Drew McIntyre who's on top of the food chain and he doesn't have the crowd to feed off of. But I will say this, being an empty arena or a performance center in this case, Drew is really showing his personality. I'm sitting there watching Monday Night Raw this this past week, and like the back and forth of Zelina was fantastic. Drew McIntyre has a great personality. He's got a great in-ring look. He's good in the ring. I mean, he's got the full package. It sucks for him to get this push at the most inopportune time. It's tough. You know, hopefully though, once this pandemic passes, hopefully sooner rather than later, we can keep Drew, going for a little while, because I think he deserves to get those pops, because he's not getting those pops. I mean, there's nobody in the audience. I mean, AEW does the best they can with, they'll have the Gun Club and a couple, they'll have Marco Stunt, a few people around the ring. But that's not the same effect as the WWE Universe or the AEW Universe, so to speak.
Yeah, no, and it looks like these matches are going to be taped into July. The one thing I'm kind of curious about is obviously the exemption that WWE got to be performing in Orlando and in the state of Florida. What kind of exemptions, because obviously this match is now going to take place at Titan Towers. So I'm kind of wondering how they got the exemption to have these superstars competing at Titan Towers and essentially having them travel quite a bit, because there was all these rumors about, wrestlers pretty much staying put in Florida. Well, who's ever in this Money in the Bank match, essentially, as a good chunk of superstars, is going to have traveled from Florida to Connecticut in the New York City area, which is a hotbed for this right now, and then back to Florida to obviously tape back Raw and SmackDown. So that's not doing them any favors. Do you think maybe that stands behind the anonymous reporter? What do you think about that aspect, the anonymous person who tried to come forward and say that WWE workers are being forced to work, and WWE came forth and said, that's not true? Whose side are you on?
I'll be honest with you. I'm on the side of WWE. I mean, these people want to work. I mean, it was WrestleMania season. We're getting ready for SummerSlam. These individuals want to wrestle. They want to perform. A lot of these guys and gals, they've come from the independent circuit. And, I went to a show a handful of years ago, like we talked about earlier, in Auburn, New York, in front of, like Matt Hardy's of the world, were wrestling in front of maybe 100 people. So, like, these guys and gals are used to wrestling in front of nobody. They just like to do it because it's something that they enjoy doing. So I don't. There's not much substance to that part, to be honest with you, the anonymous report and anything like that.
I guess I do believe that, they are getting compensation. But the problem with, I guess, the compensation or the fact that they're getting exemptions is that, yes, WWE, I think, always would let you stay home. WWE, I don't think, is forcing anyone to work ever, regardless of the circumstances. But obviously, if the show goes on, well, then your spot goes on as well. So I feel like that's one aspect where you feel like you're being forced to work, is that if work is happening but you're choosing to sit out, then it's going to pass you by. I think that's maybe what they're thinking. They're thinking they can take the time off, but the problem is when they don't want the time off anymore, then their job won't be there for them.
Unless you're Roman Reigns. Roman Reigns gets a pass because of his leukemia and everything like that. So he has the immunodeficiency stuff going on. Kyle O'Reilly's got it. He has a medical issue. He's a diabetic, so he hasn't been on NXT in the last 2 weeks. So some of these folks, WWE, their hands are tied with that, because you can't say, oh, I don't care if you have an immuno problem. You still have to wrestle. So at least WWE's, they're not pushing the envelope there. But there is an aspect to what you're saying that's correct, because if say we were wrestling, we're on the WWE, we're mid cards moving up to the top of the food chain, and I say, I want to be home with my family, blah 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 blah, and you're like, no, I'm gonna wrestle. Guess what? I'm probably done. I'm gonna lose a lot of money. You're gonna make more money down the road. So I get that part. I understand that completely. But at the end of the day, you signed a contract. It's still your job. And a lot of folks at this point don't have it. They're not working at this point. There's a lot of folks unemployed. So being able to perform and work, I think a lot of wrestlers are thankful for that.
So moving on to Vince McMahon's other venture, the second incarnation of the XFL. He's currently being sued by Oliver Luck for wrongful termination. Now, maybe you got more information on this than I do, because wrongful termination, I guess I'm kind of trying to understand, if the league doesn't exist, doesn't that naturally just make you fired? I guess. Tell us more what you think about this.
I don't think there's much substance behind it. I think Oliver Luck is just looking, to get the money that he's owed, because he's owed, I think, $10 million, millions of dollars.
Trying to recover. Yeah.
He's trying to recover money. I get it, but here's the thing: if something goes out of business, how are you going to recoup the money? I don't see any substance behind it. I think it's just Oliver Luck trying to save face, unfortunately. Vince's lawyers are some of the best lawyers in the world. Oliver's not going to win. I don't see it happening. I think Oliver Luck, he'll be fine because he's been an AD at some programs in college football or in college athletics. So he'll find something. I mean, it's not a huge deal. I think what Oliver's trying to do is just recoup his losses. I mean, hey, you know who's lost the most out of this is Vince McMahon. Vince McMahon's lost a ton of money. Vince McMahon, once again, and I have to say, Nostra Jarrett is back. You called it. I mean, you saw the future of this happening before even I did. I was hopeful.
I didn't see it happening the way it happened, but, nobody did. But, again, I think what's proving is the fact that they had these issues is kind of showing that regardless of this, maybe it would have lasted a little longer, but it wasn't going to last forever because, the idea that they had enough money. Oliver Luck went on the Colin Cowherd show and many other shows many times. It says we have enough money, regardless of if the TV ratings sag, regardless if we get dropped by the network, no matter what the circumstances are, we have the money put aside. If I tell you that I have $40,000 or $50,000 on January 1st put aside to cover my expenses for the whole year, and I'm put out of work in February or March because of COVID-19, and then I don't have the money, you can't say it's COVID-19 because you said you had the money.
Yeah.
If you were put out of work, regardless of the circumstances, the league stopped regardless of the circumstances. You said if no one showed up, meaning that everyone stopped coming in and the revenues all stopped, you had the liquid, which shows that you didn't have the liquid, you didn't have the money. And I think he's trying to sue Vince McMahon because while suing the XFL, you can't sue something that's going for bankruptcy. I think suing Vince McMahon is you're going right to the person who's got the money, who's not exempt from this, because the XFL now is like suing a ghost, because once you file for bankruptcy, that's like you're suing a ghost.
Yeah, it's like you're suing a dead person. You're not going that person. You're not going to recoup the money from them, so to speak. I will say this.
So
I don't think Vince is going to get hit with this because he's already taken enough hit as it is, where he pulled out his part of his stake in WWE to fund this. I think he's lost enough money. I don't think that anything's going to happen in the civil court. I don't think Oliver's going to get a dime. He's probably going to get a bill from Vince's lawyer saying, "Yep, you got to pay me for having me defend Vince," because that stuff does happen.
What happened here, though, and I will say this, and I've said it publicly on radio sources. I've said it to friends. I've said it to other people. Anyone ask? I was actually asked yesterday on ESPN Radio here in Syracuse about the Oliver Luck XFL situation, and I personally said this. And it's a big black eye for Vince McMahon because here's the thing. When he started the XFL the first time around, he was still in the storylines. He was doing the XFL on Saturday while being Mr. McMahon on Monday night, and it was hard to decipher the two. And Vince McMahon's reputation outside of wrestling is not the greatest. We talked in the 80s and the 90s, whether it be the steroid scandals, the death of Jimmy Snuka's girlfriend, even more recently, the death of Chris Benoit and his family, and how steroids played a part in that. Vince McMahon's name has been in the mud. He has been one of those people that is, I guess, in the wrestling world is a titan, but in the regular business world or the entrepreneur world is kind of considered a joke. And this was his chance. He's been out of WWE, the face of WWE, for a while. You haven't seen him. He's not on Monday Night Raw making Trish Stratus kiss his ex-wife. He's not out there making anyone join the Kiss My Ass Club or trying to punch Bob Costas in the face. His product is family-friendly for the most part. He's not doing anything controversial. So maybe, and he had Oliver Luck. Oliver Luck was somebody who, to really legitimize him. Oliver Luck was somebody who, if he has Oliver Luck on his side, then maybe the Adam Silvers of the world, the Gary Bettmans, the Roger Goodells, can finally take Vince McMahon seriously. And what Vince McMahon has always wanted is a spot at the big table with everyone else. He wants to be treated like a businessman. He's a Connecticut guy. He's a suit-wearing guy. He's a socialite, and he wants to be treated like that. He wants to go into those White House dinners with all the press and everybody and to be treated like a legitimate, respected businessman and not just a carny, not just the guy who runs monster trucks, not just the Jerry Springer of the world. He wanted to be taken legitimately. He wants to be taken like, I run WWE, but you can also talk to me and realize, wow, this guy is intelligent. This guy is smart. He's a great businessman. And this whole XFL thing brought that back because we find out that he lied about his finances. He lied about WWE's involvement in XFL. And now the ally that he had, who has friends in higher places, Oliver Luck, who is definitely a big legitimate name in the world of sports, is now suing him.
Yeah, I'll say this. Vince McMahon is a hell of a businessman. Let's not get that twisted by any means. I mean, he's transformed WWE the wrestling business as we know it today. I would say this. He had a hell of a sell job to sell Oliver Luck on this, number one. So that's Oliver Luck's fault for buying into what Vince is selling. Number two, he bought in. He got Bob Stoops, the national, one of the greatest coaches in college football history, to come be part of XFL. So to me, I think it's they got to get some of the flack too, because Vince just did his job and sold these big names to help bring his product up, or not maybe at an NFL level, but to maybe, like you said, get to the big boys table, so to speak. If you sell Oliver Luck, you sell Bob Stoops, you're obviously doing a hell of a job, and I think Vince McMahon should get a little bit of credit for that at least. I mean, the XFL part, yeah, he didn't have the money. Obviously, they lied about the liquidity of the finances. But isn't that Vince just selling? Vince is just a salesman. He's a salesman. That's really what he is. I mean, that's what he is.
And that's what he is. That's what he is in everyone's eyes. He's a used car salesman. Exactly. And for one, some people were starting to look at him like maybe he wasn't. But then again, those are the people like Oliver Luck and Bob Stoops who bought the lemon and are driving off the lot and were sold.
I'm surprised Bob Stoops isn't suing. I mean, if Oliver Luck's suing, why isn't Bob? Bob put enough money into it too. He put a lot of money into this XFL, and he took a massive hit out of his paycheck, so to speak, or his back pocket. So it's Bob Stoops. Don't be surprised if Oliver's doing this. Bob Stoops is not too far away, maybe.
How I want to end this show. So this last Sunday night, obviously with no live sports going on, there was the big start of what is a 10-part series about Michael Jordan called The Last Dance. And it brings up the question a lot of times that, is always brought up, whether it be the Mount Rushmore of WWE, or in this case, WWE actually put it out there themselves. Who do you think is the Michael Jordan of WWE? I'll start here and I'll say, I thought about it really hard, and I don't think there is a Michael Jordan of WWE. It's hard to find one, but the closest I could find is Ric Flair. What do you think?
Yeah, Ric Flair, 110%. I don't have to sit here and deliberate it. I don't have to sit and think about it. As soon as those words came out of your mouth, I was like, it's Ric Flair. He's definitely the GOAT, in my opinion. Who is my favorite? The real question is, who is your favorite wrestler of all time? For me, it's Stone Cold Steve Austin. Is he on the Mount Rushmore? Yes. Is he the greatest of all time? In some minds, probably, maybe. But Ric Flair is always going to be numero uno. I do think Stone Cold is on that Mount Rushmore. So, I mean, who's your favorite wrestler of all time?
Well, my favorite wrestler of all time, it just happens to be they're celebrating the 25th anniversary of him this Friday night in SmackDown, Triple H. Nice. Here's the thing. I think, again, to be the Michael Jordan, you have to have both boxes checked. You have to be a household name. That means if you don't watch wrestling, you've heard of him. And you also have to have the legitimacy in the ring. You have to have the accomplishments. Michael Jordan was more than just a household name. He was also somebody who's got the Air Jordan brand. He's got the records, whether it be most points in a game, most championships. That's things like Hulk Hogan. Hulk Hogan, everyone knows Hulk Hogan, but he's never wrestled a 30-minute match in his life. Hulk Hogan never set any sort of records of being in any sort of technical wrestling matches that people will remember forever. Yeah, they have the name Hulk Hogan. They all remember him, but he doesn't have those accolades. Now, another person I thought came kind of close, but their time in wrestling was very short, and that's The Rock. His time in wrestling that he was really on top of wrestling, I would probably say would be from like late 98 to 2002. Before then he became a part-timer and started to do the movies and the wrestling back and forth. But just like Jordan's got the Air Jordan brand, he's got the Brahma Bull Under Armour brand. I mean, he's definitely somebody out there who transcends wrestling, while at the same time he's been in Iron Man matches. He's been in Hell in a Cell matches. So he's more than just this flashy name, but he's been a accomplished wrestler as well. I just think the time in wrestling he's been there was just a little bit short. Stone Cold Steve Austin has a mix. I think Stone Cold Steve Austin's pretty close. Yeah, but I think Ric Flair's got the total package.
Stone Cold's done movies. Stone Cold's been, most people, at least our age, will know him very well for being the Hellraiser, the ass kicker, everybody back in the day looked up to Stone Cold because he got to screw with his boss every Monday night. You know what I mean? So Stone Cold is very transcendent. Another name, kind of in that, I don't want to say the rock kind of way, But John Cena is another name because John Cena, he's had a longer career in wrestling than The Rock, but he hasn't had as much success as The Rock in movies. So they're kind of like a mix of each other. Like one's done more in wrestling, one's done more in movies. I mean, John Cena's got to be in the conversation too, right?
I mean, that's the thing with WWE, because wrestling is wrestling and it's not the NBA. There's lots of people in the conversation. I think wrestling essentially makes it so that there really can't be a Michael Jordan because, well, they set up storylines. Like if the NBA was the WWE, I don't think Michael Jordan might have 6 championships. They might have screwed him out of the championship against the Seattle Sonics back in '96, or some sort of interesting storyline. So it's hard to actually find one that matches all the boxes. And Ric Flair probably didn't match all the boxes till more recently. I mean, he was a household name in the world of wrestling and maybe down south, but it's probably over the last 10 years that he's been this household name on Super Bowl commercials, all throughout America. Being the 16-time champion, meaning holding wrestling records that people can't touch while being able to wrestle late in his life. Michael Jordan played into his 40s. He obviously wrestled much later than that, but then having the pop culture reverence at the same time, I think Ric Flair is a total package.
Yeah, I agree. And one last thought, I mean, he also was in rap videos. So, I mean, people have done Ric Flair songs. So, I mean, I think Ric Flair is the closest you're going to get to a Michael Jordan-esque wrestler of all time.
I will leave you with this, and that is, if you're going to pick a Robert Horry of WWE, I pick The Undertaker because, he's been there the whole time through. He's got all the championships. He's got all the accolades. Problem is that his character never let him get that mainstream popularity. But, through Hulk Hogan, through a little bit of Ric Flair, through John Cena, through Stone Cold, The Undertaker has always been there, just like Robert Horry's got himself. How many championships has Robert Horry? He's got 6, right?
I think he's got more than that. I think he
might have 7 or 8 with the Spurs. He had more with the Spurs.
Well, yeah, because he won back when Jordan took some time off with baseball. He won titles with the Rockets.
He won the titles with the Rockets. He won titles with the Spurs. He won titles with the Lakers.
I think he's got 8. I could be wrong. I mean, our fans can tweet us and let me know because I don't know off the top of my head. But
it's not an NBA show. It's okay if we're wrong on that.
It's more than most guys. I'll just say that.
It's somebody. So the Undertaker's the Robert Horry of the WWE.
I'll throw one at you. Kane could also be in that discussion too because Kane's also been a prominent figure in WWE as well. So and he's never really got a mainstream push. So I'll throw Kane in there as well.
I'll say Kane is the John Stockton of the WWE. No world championships, but he was always there. Unfortunately, Kane was there at the wrong time when the Stone Colds, the Undertakers, the Triple H's, and the Rocks were there. So just like John Stockton and Shawn Kemp and Karl Malone always being there at the wrong time, that's kind of Kane.
It's just funny. I've never heard John Stockton and Kane in the same sentence as a comparison. That's the first. I'm never going to forget that. That's pretty funny.
All right, that's going to do it for this week's edition of the Heel to Face podcast. For Brandon the Icebreaker Clements, you can find him on Twitter at Icebreaker21 and myself at K-Rock Jared. Follow the program at Heel to the Face. We'll get back at you next week as we continue on the road to Money in the Bank, as well as whatever the world of wrestling brings us. This has been the Heel to Face podcast.